Uh, Chapter 109, Ahab and Starbuck in the Cabin. According to usage, they were pumping the ship next morning, and lo, no inconsiderable oil came up with the water. The casks below must have sprung a bad leak. Much concern was shown, and Starbuck went down into the cabin to report this unfavorable affair. In sperm whalemen with any considerable quantity of oil on board, it is a regular semi-weekly duty to conduct a hose into the hold and drench the casks with seawater, which afterwards, at varying intervals, is removed from the ship by the ship's pumps. Hereby the casks are sought to be kept damply tight, while by the changed character of the withdrawn water the mariners readily detect serious leakage in the precious cargo. Now from the south and west the Pequod was drawing nigh to Formosa and the Banshee Isles, between which lies the tropical outlets from the China waters into the Pacific. And so Starbuck found Ahab with the general chart of the Oriental archipelagos spread before him, and another separate one representing the long eastern coast of the Japanese islands, Niphon, Matsumae, and Shikoke. With his snow-white new ivory leg braced against the screwed leg of his table, and a long pruning hook of a jackknife in his hand, the wondrous old man with his back to the gangway door was wrinkling his brow and tracing his old courses again. "Who's there?" hearing the footsteps at the door, but not turning round to it. "On deck! Begone! Captain Ahab mistakes. It is I. The oil in the hold is leaking, sir. We must burdens and breaking out." "Up burdens and break out? Now that we have nearing Japan heave to here for a week to tinker with a parcel of old hoops? Either do that, sir, or waste one day more than oil than we can make in good in a year. We have come 20,000 miles to get is worth saving, sir. So it is, if we get it. I was speaking of the oil in the hold, sir, and I was speaking or thinking of that at all. Begone, let it leak, and I am all to leak myself. Aye, leaks and leaks, not only full of leaky casks, but those leaky casks are in leaky ship, and that's far worse plight than the Pequod's, man. Yet I do not stop to plug my leak, for who can find it in a deep-loaded hull, or how hope to plug it, even if found in this life's howling gale. Starbuck, I'll not have burdens hoisted. What will the owners say, sir? Let the owners stand on Nantucket Beach and out-yell the typhoons. What cares Ahab? Owners, owners, thou art always prating to me, Starbuck, about those miserly owners, as if the owners were my conscience. But look ye, the only real owner of anything is its commander, and hark ye, my conscience is in this ship's keel. On deck." "Captain Ahab," said the reddening mate, moving forward into the cabin, with a daring so strangely respectful and cautious that it almost seemed not every way to seeking to avoid the slightest outward manifestation of itself, but within also seemed more than half distrustful of itself. "A better man than I might well pass over in thee what he would quickly enough resent in a younger man. Aye, and in a happier, Captain Ahab. Devils, dost thou so much as dare to critically think of me? On deck!" "Nay, sir, not yet, I do entreat, and I do dare, sir, to be forbearing. Shall we not understand each other better hitherto, Captain Ahab?" Ahab seized a loaded musket from the rack, forming part of most South Seamen's cabin furniture, and pointing it towards Starbuck, exclaiming, "There is one God that is Lord over the earth, and one captain that is Lord over the Pequod. On deck!" For an instant, in the flashing eyes of the mate, his fiery cheeks, you would have almost thought that he had really received the blaze of the leveled tube. But mastering his emotion, he calmly rose, and, as he quitted the cabin, paused for an instant and said, "Thou hast outraged, not insulted me, sir. But for that I ask thee not to beware of Starbuck. Thou wouldst but laugh. But let Ahab beware of Ahab. Beware of thyself, old man. He waxes brave, but nevertheless obeys. Most careful bravery at that," muttered Ahab, and Starbuck disappeared. What was it that he said? Ahab, beware of Ahab? There's something there. Then unconsciously using the musket for a staff, with an iron brow he paced to and fro in his little cabin. But presently the thick plates of his forehead relaxed, and returning the gun to his rack, he went to the deck. "Thou art but too good a fellow, Starbuck," he said lowly to the mate. Then raising his voice to the crew, Furl the topgallant sails and close reef the topsails fore and aft and back the main yard. Upbird it and break out the main hold. It was perhaps vain to surmise exactly what it was that, as respecting Starbuck, Ahab thus acted. It may have been a flash of honesty in him, or mere prudential policy, which, under the circumstances, imperiously forbade the slightest symptom of open disaffection, however transient. In the important chief officer of his ship, however, his orders were executed and the burdens were hoisted. This is the end of chapter 109. So here we have the ship as part of the regular maintenance. They take seawater and they wash it over all the casks in the hold. And it's like, why are you pumping water into a ship? Because you're just going to have to pump the water out. And they have pumps that regularly run and pump out water from the bottom of the hold because water slowly seeps in through the sides of the ship and it gets moist and damp and wet. And the water just slowly seeps in. If there's a place where the boards don't quite fit right, the water will seep in faster there. They talked about another ship where they had a serious leak and pumps were running full and they had to put in. Well, here they're pumping water over the barrels. Now, wood, when it's wet with water, swells up and it pushes the fibers aside. So what happens is that you have these barrels ringed in iron. Now, the iron doesn't change when it gets wet, but as the wood expands when it gets wet, it squeezes tighter because it tries to expand against the rings. It can't expand against the rings. So it squeezes tighter on the inside, and any little cracks close up. But when the barrel dries out, then you have the cracks opening up. Plus, oil and water don't mix. And so oil can seep through wood and water can seep through wood. But if you have wood in the water, the oil can't seep through the wood. So what this does is this keeps the oil inside of the barrels and it keeps the barrels tight around the oil. And then they said that, they pump the water out. They pump the water over the casks. And then when they pump out the bilges, they were seeing oil in the bilge. So they're pumping the water out of the ship. And because they were seeing oil in there, that means oil must have leaked out of some cask out of the dozens, hundreds that they have in the hold. One of those must be leaking. Maybe two of them, because there's a good amount of oil. Maybe it's one of them's gone dry. Maybe it's two or three are leaking. So Starbuck is like, Captain, we're losing all of our money. And Ahab is like, no, I don't care. Don't care about the money. Don't care about the owners who only care about the money. I want Moby Dick. Starbuck is like, Captain, you're not being responsible here. And the captain pulls a gun. Now, pulling a gun is a very reckless thing to do. And always be very careful with guns. Always keep the NRA has 3 rules about guns that they give in all of their training. And it's always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. Always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Never load the gun until you're ready to shoot. And so there's all of these rituals about firearms where it's like, if someone hands you a firearm, the first thing you do is you check to see if it's loaded. Even if they say it's not loaded, you look for yourself. Oh, it's loaded or it's not loaded. And so Ahab keeps a loaded gun. And he points it at Starbuck, which is a very bad thing to do. And then he's like walking around using the gun as a stick, which is another really bad thing to do because all sorts of people have shot themselves. There's all sorts of videos out there on YouTube of people saying, you have to be safe with guns, and then shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, YouTube is just rotten with videos like that. Professionals, policemen, trainers saying, you have to be careful with guns, and then shooting themselves. So Ahab was doing several stupid things here, and Starbuck is like, Captain, I'm not saying be afraid of me. You got to watch yourself. Ahab should be afraid of Ahab. And then Ahab was walking around with a gun, using it as a walking stick. And maybe that's what came to his attention. Ahab hasn't seen YouTube, but I'm sure Ahab knows about people who have done stupid things with guns. So Ahab is like, Ahab needs to be afraid of Ahab. It's like, I'm not afraid of hell. I'm not afraid of God. I'm not afraid of the devil. I'm not afraid of Moby Dick. They all should be afraid of me. It's like, maybe I should be a little bit afraid of myself. And so Ahab, man, Ahab is usually used as a bad example. All sorts of, oh, don't be like Ahab. Don't be like Ahab. But, with the exception of waving around a gun and pointing it at Starbuck, this is yet another time Ahab gets it right. He's like, he goes up and he apologizes to Starbuck. That's unheard of. That's almost unheard of. But, it's the right thing to do. Because, it's showing that, okay, yes, I yelled at you. But he's saying, okay, you have a point. Now, Starbuck also here did the right thing. Starbuck was 100% right. He was right about checking for leaking oil and reporting it and getting it fixed. Because not only is it, a safety, not only is it losing money, it's a safety hazard. Because, one, the oil is slick. And so if the oil gets up on stuff, you can slip and fall and hurt yourself. Or if you have a large amount of oil, this stuff burns. So if you have the oil and it accidentally catches on fire, then you have this fire burning through the hold, and then all of a sudden, all of the oil goes up, and then the oil in the barrel starts burning, and then, you're walking home. Oh, wait, you're in the middle of the ocean. You're not walking home. You're floating for a couple of days until you die of dehydration, and then you sink. Assuming, of course, the sharks don't eat you. So Starbuck was 100% right here. And he was also right because when he was talking to Ahab and saying, Ahab, you're wrong, he was doing it in private. And so that's the right thing to do. When you need to correct somebody, when you need to say you're wrong, unless it's a safety issue, unless it's an issue where someone was painfully wrong and causing trouble, and you need to nip that in the bud and stop people from doing that ever again, you always correct in private. Take the person aside, say, excuse me, you're wrong. These are the reasons why you're wrong. Maybe we should do these other things to make things right. And so that's Starbuck. And Starbuck was like, Captain, you're wrong here. We're losing our money. We're going to make the owners unhappy. We're going to come back with empty barrels that we thought were full. And so we can stop now, fix the barrels. And Ahab's like, ow. Now, here we go back to Ahab doing the right thing. Ahab apologized to Starbuck in public. He's like, Starbuck, you're right. We need to lower the sails. We need to clear out the hold. We need to find the leak. And so you build people up in public and you take them down in private because the shame of it, of being corrected, is horrible. You don't like being corrected. I craws. It gets in my craw, people correcting me. But at the same time, I know that they're trying to benefit me. But the humiliation of doing that in public in front of other people, that's almost just like, flaying them, whipping them and beating them. It's just terrible. Just the sensation of being corrected in front of other people. It's just humiliating. And so you always correct in private unless you really need to stop something and you really need to make an example of somebody. And you always build up in public. So if you want to tell somebody they did a good job, tell them in front of other people, and make sure that you tell those other people when they do a good job in front of other people. So everyone sees, oh, you know, this, you like to praise people, and you praise people and make sure that everyone knows it gets praised in public, and it really builds them up more. It feels more real. That it's like, you did a good job, and if it's just the two of you, I mean, it's two people talking, you and me talking. No, you did a good job there. It's like, oh really? Okay. But if I say, Regicide did a good job with this in front of everybody, then that means something, because other people will know that I said that you did a good job, rather than you just saying, "Oh, my pop said I did a good job." It's like, no, that's something when it comes from the person's mouth. So here they are fixing the oil, fixing the barrels, and yeah, bunch of good stuff. And Ahab is actually right again. Whew.